Welcome to the J-Spot, the place where we stimulate the most sensitive area of your brain right before you knock out for the day.
That intro wakes me up more than my morning coffee.
That is the goal. But seriously, stick with me, because today we are tackling something that I think is going to resonate with literally everyone listening.
Yep.
Yeah. Even if you've never put a name to it, you felt it. We're looking at what are called invisible scripts.
Invisible scripts. I like that. It sounds almost cinematic.
Doesn't it? But it's less Hollywood and more subconscious programming. It's all these unwritten rules that seem to govern our lives.
Right. The things that determine who gets seen as a natural leader just by default.
Exactly. Or who is seen as innocent, who's seen as guilty before they even open their mouth, and whose comfort is, prioritized in classrooms and boardrooms.
It's the architecture of our social interactions.
Yeah.
We think we're just acting naturally, but really we're following a blueprint we didn't design.
100%. And looking at the stack of research we have for today, eclectic is an understatement.
It does look a bit scattered at first glance.
I mean, we've got psychological studies on introverts versus extroverts. Then there's this heavy-hitting analysis of policy documents from 18 states.
Those bans on divisive concepts.
Yes, those. And then we pivot to research on the adultification of Black girls. And we finish with, of all things, guides for health professionals on cultural humility.
It's a wide net. But there's a very strong, very rigid connecting thread here.
Which is?
Normativity.
Normativity. Okay, that sounds like a grad school word. Let's unpack that for everyone.
Simply put, it's the idea that society establishes a default setting, a normal.
Okay.
And everything else, everything that isn't that default, is treated not just as different, but as a deviation, a deficit.
Ah, I see.
So today's deep dive is really about exploring what those defaults are, whether it's the extrovert ideal or white normativity, and what happens to the people who fall outside those margins.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because we're going to find out why being quiet is so often mistaken for being weak, and how laws banning books might actually be less about education.
And more about protecting what some scholars call emotional property.
Emotional property. That is a fascinating concept. Okay, let's start with the personality stuff. I think a lot of us have felt this.
Oh, for sure.
You're in a meeting, maybe back in school, and the person talking the most, the loudest voice, is automatically assumed to be the smartest or the best leader.
That is the extrovert ideal in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's this cultural belief that the ideal self is, gregarious, alpha, comfortable in the spotlight.
And it wasn't always like this, right? The sources mention this really interesting shift. We moved from a culture of character to a culture of personality.
Yes, exactly. If you look back to, say, the 19th century, the ideal self was based on character. Serious, disciplined, virtuous.
Like Abraham Lincoln, probably not the life of the party.
Exactly. The guy you trust to run the country, but maybe not the guy you want to invite to a rager. But as we moved into the 20th century, with big business and urbanization, the ideal shifted to personality. Magnetic, dominant, fascinating. Think of the rise of the salesman.
So it wasn't about who you were inside, but how you performed on the outside.
And this has real consequences. The data shows about 40% of executives are introverts, yet our institutions are built almost exclusively for extroverts.
Oh, totally. I mean, just think about open plan offices, that nightmare of trying to focus while someone is on a loud call 3 feet away.
Or schools?
Yes. Those collaborative tables. You get graded on participation, so if you're the kid who needs 5 minutes to think before you speak, you get penalized.
You're seen as disengaged, or worse, slow. But the reality check here is powerful. There was a Harvard study mentioned in our sources that found introverted leaders often produce better results than extroverts.
Wait, better. That feels backwards. The script says you need a big personality to rally the troops.
Not always. The study found it's especially true when they're managing proactive teams. Because introverts listen.
They're not trying to dominate the room.
They don't feel the need to put their own stamp on every single decision. So they let good ideas bubble up from their team, and then they implement them.
Whereas an extrovert might just accidentally steamroll everyone.
Accidentally is the key word. They're not being malicious. They just process their thoughts by speaking, So they can end up suppressing other ideas by filling all the airtime.
It's just a different operating system.
Exactly. But because of the extrovert ideal, we see introversion as a flaw to be fixed, not just a different way of being.
So the script says loud is good, quiet is bad. That's our first default setting. But if we pivot from personality norms to racial norms, well, the stakes get a lot higher than just being annoyed in a meeting.
They do. And this is where we have to look at that 2025 study analyzing policy documents across 18 states.
Right. These are the bans on divisive concepts, or anti-CRT policies.
And the researchers argue these bans aren't really about legal theory at all. They used a framework from the legal scholar Cheryl Harris called Whiteness as Property.
Whiteness as property. That sounds intense. What does that actually mean?
It's a challenging concept, but it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It argues that in our society, whiteness functions like an asset, like owning a house.
So it has value. It provides benefits.
Exactly. And like any property, it comes with rights. Specifically, the right to exclude and the right to use and enjoyment.
Okay, I get the asset part, historically, with loans and housing. But for schools and book bans, what does right to use and enjoyment even mean? The right to enjoy history class?
In a way, yes. It's interpreted here as the right to be comfortable, the right to not have your worldview or your ownership of the national story challenged.
Wow.
And the researchers found three discursive maneuvers, basically linguistic tricks, that these laws use to protect that property.
Okay, let's break these down. What's the first one?
The first is false equivalencies. The policies equate white discomfort
Just feeling uncomfortable.
with racial oppression.
Hold on. So a student feeling bad or guilty about something from history is being treated as the same thing as actual systemic discrimination.
Legally, in the text of these documents.
Yes.
The policies frame learning about systemic racism as a form of psychological distress for white students.
That's a heavy pivot. It reframes guilt as victimhood. What's the second trick?
Appealing to universal values. You see terms like colorblindness or meritocracy all through these laws.
Which sounds good on paper, right? I don't see color.
It sounds noble, but in practice, it's used to obscure inequities. If we pretend race doesn't exist, then we can't talk about how it actually impacts people's lives today.
It's like you're silencing the conversation before it can even start.
Exactly. And the third maneuver is controlling definitions. These laws try to legally define what racism is.
And I'm guessing it's a very narrow definition.
Very. Usually it's limited to intentional individual acts of meanness, using a slur.
So if I'm not personally a bad guy, racism doesn't exist.
That's the logic. It completely writes off systemic or structural racism. By controlling the definition, they effectively make the larger problem disappear.
So the invisible script is, we can talk about history, but only if it doesn't make the dominant group feel bad.
And when you prioritize that comfort, you erase the lived reality of people who have experienced discrimination. You're telling them their history is too painful for you to hear.
Speaking of lived reality, let's go from state laws down to the street level, to everyday interactions.
This brings us to microaggressions.
Right, and the micro here doesn't mean the harm is small, does it?
No, not at all. It means it happens at the micro level interpersonally between people, rather than the macro level of law.
Got it. So it's micro, like up close.
Precisely. And there are three types. First is the micro assault. This is explicit. Name-calling, purposeful discrimination. It's old-fashioned, overt racism.
Okay, that's the obvious stuff.
Then there's the micro insult. This is more subtle. It's communication that demeans a person's heritage, often unconsciously.
Like what? Give me an example.
An example would be asking a person of color at a top company, so how did you get this job?
Oof. Implying they didn't get it on merit.
Exactly. It's an insult disguised as a question. And the third type is the micro-invalidation.
And that is?
This is where you negate someone's lived reality. The classic one is, I don't see color. Or asking an Asian American, no, where are you really from?
Right. The message is, you are a foreigner, you don't belong here.
And the sources are clear. This isn't just about hurt feelings. It's a public health issue.
Yeah, I saw that phrase, death by 1,000 cuts.
It creates chronic stress. Cumulative exposure correlates with high blood pressure, depression, anxiety, even PTSD.
Yeah.
Your body is constantly on alert.
That sounds exhausting. And this policing of behavior, it starts so young. We have the study on the adultification of Black girls. This one hit me hard.
It's a heartbreaking but crucial part of the script. Research shows that teachers and other authority figures often adultify Black girls.
Meaning what, exactly?
They're viewed as older, less innocent, and more knowledgeable about sex than their white peers in the same age.
We're talking about children. So a white student acts out, talks back.
And they're having a bad day? They get the benefit of the doubt.
But when a black student does the same thing,
The script flips. She's seen as aggressive, disrespectful, threatening. She's punished more harshly for the exact same behaviors.
so we're stripping away their innocence, and by doing that, we're stripping away the protections a child is supposed to have.
Their childhood is stolen because they don't fit the normative image of innocence, which is so often coded as white and submissive.
Wow. Okay, so we've got introverts being told to be loud. We have laws protecting comfort, microaggressions wearing people down. It feels really heavy.
It is heavy. These systems are durable because they're often invisible to the people who benefit from them.
So what's the fix? The corporate answer is always diversity training. Take a class, get a certificate, you're done. You're culturally competent.
And the sources we have suggest that's exactly the wrong approach, or at least an incomplete one.
Why? Competence sounds good.
Because competence implies mastery. It suggests you can study a culture, pass a test, and be done. You can't master someone else's life experience.
That makes sense. It's kind of arrogant to think you could, so what's the alternative?
Cultural humility.
Humility, I like that.
It's a framework that says this is a lifelong process. It's not about knowing everything. It's about constant self-reflection and self-critique.
So it starts by looking in the mirror, not at a textbook.
Exactly. Have 3 parts. First, you have to admit what you don't know. The other person is the expert on their own life.
That shifts the power dynamic right away.
Which leads to the second part. Recognize and challenge those power imbalances. In a doctor-patient or teacher-student relationship, you have to acknowledge the power you hold.
And the third?
Institutional accountability. It's not just on you to be a nice person. You have to work to change the bias systems, the school rules, the hospital policies.
This all feels much more active. And it requires understanding, I'm guessing. Intersectionality.
Yes. You can't separate a black woman's experience into just race or just gender. The overlap creates unique forms of discrimination. Cultural humility means seeing the whole person.
So, if I'm summing all this up, whether we're talking about a quiet introvert forced to act like a salesperson, or a student of color who can't learn their own history because it makes someone else uncomfortable, the theme is the same.
It is. We prioritize a specific norm, and we penalize difference. We treat difference as a deficit.
It's about who gets to be the default setting.
Precisely. And I have to say, looking at this material, it's exactly the kind of nuanced, critical thinking we need from the PsyD students over at Rivier University in New Hampshire.
Oh, absolutely. Shout out to Rivier.
Unpacking these layers of bias from policy down to the personal. That is the future of mental health. It's not just about diagnosing an individual, but the context they're living in.
That's a great point. You can't heal a flower if the soil is toxic.
Which brings me to the question I think we should leave everyone with today. The sources all suggest that when we prioritize comfort, specifically the comfort of the dominant group, we're engaging in a form of erasure.
We erase the messy, painful parts of reality.
So the question to ask yourself is your comfort worth the cost of someone else's reality? If hearing a different perspective makes you uncomfortable, is that a sign of harm, or is it a sign of growth?
That is something to chew on. We're going to leave it there for today. Thank you for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.
The J-Spot is a J. Breyer Allen production, executive produced by J. Drick Rivera, edited by Linda M. and Gisette Garcia. See you next time.